In Trackmania, players can make their own personalized maps for others to drive on. Something that is very common amongst these mappers is to give feedback and thoughts about each other's maps, in order to enhance their knowledge about the game to then hopefully improve their future work. And in this video, that is exactly what I'm going to do. I asked my community in Discord to send in their maps for me to review in a video. But something that I realized quickly is that I have way too much to say about a single map. So I decided to pick a small batch of maps, playtest them and just speak my mind. So instead of me repeating myself about essentially the same things over and over again, I decided to bring up some fair points that can be applied to basically any other map. I hope some of the things mentioned will either help or give you an insight in how I think when playing a map for the first time. Keep in mind though, that everyone has their own opinions. Something that looks good to me might not look good to you, and that is perfectly fine. Imagine how boring a world would be where everything was the same. And with that out of the way, let's head straight into the first map, Midos by Just Marvel. My first impression of the map when hovering it is that it looks great. My attention goes directly towards the islands which the route is placed on, surrounded by these tall towers. The map has a green theme, which is complemented by the blue water, and the route seems to be some sort of flat, speedy grass road mix. The map starts off with a downhill into a left turn, followed by a grass straight where you have to set up for the next turn. In this straight, you're in the third gear, so you wouldn't want to slide when setting up for the next turn. When leaving the grass, you want to exit as straight as possible to not slide out and lose speed. It is also at this point where you gear up to fourth. Sliding when gearing will lose you a lot of speed as your car is not accelerating during a gear shift. So doing this slightly wrong will punish you for the rest of the map, since you want to keep speed. Either way, when you gear up to fourth and leave the road, there is once again a grass section. To the unknown eye, the first and second grass sections are seemingly identical, but you actually want to drive these two sections completely differently. Since you're now in gear 4, it's actually faster to slide rather than going straight, performing so-called speed slides. Gears are indicated by these white lights on the back of the car, but you can also identify which gear you're in by either looking at the speed indicator or listening to the car's engine. You gear up from 3rd to 4th at about 235 speed. After the grass, we enter another road section, slightly tighter than the last one because of the speed difference. This time it's not possible to go full speed, so we have to do a small auto drift, which is initialized by angling your car slightly before the surface transitions from grass to road. You want to take this corner leaving with as much exit speed as possible with a good angle. But as you may or may not have noticed, we're approaching the speed of gear 5. In the last road turn, we want to keep our car straight in order to not gear up while sliding. And in this turn, we have the exact same problem. The difference here though, is that we can't opt for the same solution as the last turn, where we wanted to prevent sliding. Because this turn is impossible to take at full speed and exit with a good angle. So instead, we actually want to slow down to prevent our car from gearing up, as that would lose less speed than gearing up. The explanation for this is that you're approaching gear 5 while sliding. If you reach the speed required for gear 5 while doing so, your car will stop accelerating for a split second. During that small time frame, you will actually go below the gear 5 threshold and end up in gear 4 again. And just like any other gear shift, your car will not accelerate during this time. And the same goes for gearing down to 4th. It's a gear shift, so your car will lose speed for a small amount of time. So as a mapper, you can look for these kinds of gear shifts and prevent them from happening during a turn. In this scenario, for example, what I would do is shorten the grass section so that you can't build enough speed to accidentally gear up to 5th. The next section is once again grass, so we can already tell that the route has a pattern, where it alternates between grass and road. The route is basically the same for the rest of the map. So I would say it's pretty beginner friendly since it's so easy to learn. And this considering the gear issues aren't really a problem unless you're going really fast. Though I gotta say, I don't really like getting punished for going fast. Especially in a map like this where you would think you want to gather as much speed as possible throughout the whole map. But if we don't consider the gear problems, it's actually pretty fun to play. It's surprisingly challenging for being so simple, even though it's probably unintended. At the start of the track, there's a GPS. A GPS is a trigger which you can drive into in order to watch a replay of the map being driven. A thing I noticed before I even started playing is that there are 3 indicators that there is a GPS trigger on the finish block. the media tracker text, the yellow text saying GPS, and the fact that there is a finish block next to the start. I think most people recognize a finish next to the start as a GPS without any other indication, as this is a very common technique being used in many maps. In this scenario, the yellow text sign is kind of useful, because of the sign pointing to the left, which would be somewhat misleading without it, as it would look like going to the finish is the intended route. Now there are some options to make the start look a bit cleaner, like putting the finish block on the right side of the sign to make it less misleading, and change some of the scenery to make it more visible. But for this one, an easy fix would just be to remove the media tracker text. Moving on to the scenery, I really like the theme that is going on here. The green towers, palm trees and the water. All of this with some details like poles, pools and the overhead lights make it look pretty good. Even though I feel like something is missing at certain parts, I think with a little bit of tweaking and added detail it could look even better. But this scenery is definitely not bad. The route has some gear issues and it's pretty repetitive and simple. But I think the concept of an auto drift route has potential. I just don't think this is it. So I'm gonna give the route a 2 out of 5 stars. I love the theme of the scenery. It's definitely a step in the right direction when it comes to what I like, but it's lacking details in some parts and I feel like the towers could be a bit refined. So I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 stars, which then gives the map a final rating of 3 out of 5. The next map is Transitional Shorts 20 by Sharks. My first impression is that the scenery looks super nice. It reminds me of the scenery style that I used on my map Breakdown, which also had these big half pipes connected to the route in a very abstract way. And knowing Shags, my expectations for the route is high as well. This map, which you might have guessed from the number in the name, is a part of a map sequence containing short transitional maps. Having played the other maps previously on my Twitch stream, I can definitely recommend it if you're looking for some fun, short transitional maps. Either way, the map consists of a lot of these small transitions, hence the style of the map, Transitional. In transitional maps, the main focus is almost always airtime management when trying to save time, because more time spent in the air is less time spent on the ground. And since the car is accelerating when touching the ground, it makes sense to try to minimize airtime. And since transitional maps are basically just a bunch of small jumps between different things, there will usually be a lot of moments where you can try to minimize it. However, the key points where you can gain time in this map is not necessarily in the transitions. Most of the time gained is actually in the first grass section, where you can do a very tight speed slide to gain time, which then sets you up for the next turn, where you have to try to take the grass really tight, maximizing your exit speed for the end straight. Now this small speed slide is not necessarily bad, but it was kind of annoying because it's so hard to perform. And even though the speed slide was kind of annoying, the rest of the map is super well built. The transitions are smooth as butter, it's intuitive, and I had fun playing it. So the route is going to get 4 out of 5 stars. The scenery reminds me of my own map Breakdown, and I really like the white and green color theme, complemented by the orange trees. It's super detailed and I don't think I could ask for more from an 18-second map, so the scenery is going to get an easy 5 out of 5 stars, giving this map an average of 4.5 rating. The next map we're going to take a look at is Prelude by Xide001. Judging from the overview, it seems to be somewhat of a tight tech map. The theme of the scenery is very compact with some abstract elements in a black and white colorway. Right in the beginning of the map, there is a jump from a ramp into a slope landing where you wanna do a diagonal jump to save time, followed by a very tight right turn where you either wanna tap release or do a neo slide. Trying to perform a normal drift in this corner would result in a no slide, as the force of the car getting pushed towards the ground is too great in this particular corner. I'm not sure if this is intended by the author, but since they stated that this is one of their first maps, and since these no slide turns are very common in beginner tech maps, it wouldn't be bold to assume that they tried to make a drifting turn but failed to do so. Another reason why I think this was supposed to be a normal drift is because the validation ghost actually tries to drift it, but ends up no sliding. Either way, the reason you want to drift this corner in the first place is because you want to set up for the next turn, which is a really long precision section where you build up a lot of speed, followed by a transition where you initialize a drift by the landing where you have to try to keep your gear throughout the turn. And since you exit with a lot of speed, you will either have to compensate by releasing or taking the turn completely perfect in order to not crash in the upcoming turn. Followed by this we have a drift tap turn into the last CP, ending the map with a huge drop where you have to angle your car to take the risky finish. But be beware, if you have too great speed or slightly wrong angle, you might actually either overjump, crash into or miss the finish completely. Overall, the route is very hard. To drive this map fast you have to perform many daunting tasks, such as low jumping, neo sliding, clear a precise section without hitting anything or accidentally sliding out, initiate drifts from transitions, keep gears, manage exit speed, and calculate landings. I actually had a pretty good time playing it, but because of some inconsistencies and unintended sections, I cannot give the route more than a 3 out of 5 stars. Though this route reminds me of my first tech maps, so I think if the author continues to improve their tech routing skills, we are going to see great things from them in the future. I think the scenery looks good, its abstract shapes and details are very pleasing to look at, but some parts look a bit messy and inconsistent. There is almost too much going on at the same time in some spots. I think with some very slight improvements it could look even better, so I'm going to give the scenery 4 out of 5 stars. Making the final rating for this map 3.5 out of 5. Hopefully part of the things that I brought up here gave you some ideas what you can do to improve your own maps. If you like these kinds of videos or want to get more engaged in the Trackmania community, then the link to my Discord server and other socials are in the description. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time.